This is all theater. This is all just political theater.
Political theater. Political theater.
Pure political
theater.
Theater.
Political theater.
The
nefarious,
Significant and protracted
political
theater for political theater's sake.
I yield back.
From Washington, this is Political Theater, Roll Call's review of the spectacle of politics on Capitol Hill and across the country. I'm Jason Dick. President-elect Trump came back to Washington on Wednesday, and we have gotten a lot of news about people that he's hiring for his cabinet and his senior staff. And in this episode of Political Theater, I'm going to talk to my good friend and colleague John Bennett, White House correspondent, editor-at-large for CQ Roll Call, particularly about the members of Congress and former members of Congress, whom the former president and president-to-be has tapped for his cabinet and senior staff. And we'll do kind of just a quick explainer on how who these people are and why you may have heard of them, or maybe you should have heard of them, or maybe just like you haven't heard of them and we've barely heard of them, but we know a few things about them. Does that make sense? Will that work, John?
That works. That makes complete sense, and I think everyone will figure out why very soon.
All right. Well, let's start in New York. The president-elect Donald Trump is a New Yorker through and through. Like all good New Yorkers, he eventually moved to Florida, where he resides currently. His legal residence at Mar-a-Lago. And voting registration, but he right out of the gate he nominated or announced his intention to nominate two New Yorkers, one current member of Congress and one former member of Congress. Let's start with the current member of Congress, Elise Stefanik, Republican Congresswoman from upstate New York, kind of Albany-ish area. She has been in Congress for 5 terms, and she is Trump's pick to be U.S. ambassador to the UN. What do we know about Elise Stefanik?
We know that she was not always a huge Trumper, and a funny thing happened on the way to House leadership. She went into the phone booth and came out wearing her MAGA red, and she had become one of the biggest defenders, allies, etc., so on and so forth, of Donald Trump. She appeared at many rallies with him, and he became impressed. I'm sure the New York tie didn't hurt. And she, by criticizing the United Nations, as she has over the last few years, calling it anti-Semitic, she went on cable news and did the same thing. Trump watches tons of cable news. Voila, she's U.S. ambassador to the UN nominee.
And she is the outgoing House Republican Conference chairwoman. She sort of wrested that title from Liz Cheney, who was the Republican Conference chairwoman, until she decided that she was going to not be on board with, say, the January 6th sacking of the Capitol and things like that, and criticized Trump. She was quickly deposed, and Elise Stefanik won that seat. And as you said, has gone from being Trump skeptic to it's interesting to hear people say they were a never Trumper, which kind of obviates the term never. But she certainly criticized the former president, before getting on board the bandwagon, if you will.
Right.
And she's just got a sort of short relocation to the UN headquarters. So, and we'll see. That can be a high profile position. People like certainly Patrick Moynihan, former senator, late senator from New York, used that perch as a way into power circles at the federal level. And people like Susan Rice, and most recently have done the same. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what she does and how she approaches this job.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's not entirely clear what she wants to do with it, but we'll find out. She'll have a confirmation hearing in the Senate. We'll find out.
another New Yorker. This is a former Lee Zeldin. He was a Long Island congressman, served 4 terms. He left in 2022 to run for governor of New York. He, as a lot of Republicans statewide have a tough hill to climb in New York, he made it pretty close. He made it uncomfortably close, I think, for a lot of Democrats, and kept the margins pretty tight to Kathy Hochul, who was running for a full term. And I've heard a lot of chatter among strategists and so forth and observers that he probably more than anyone else in the New York political circles was responsible for Republicans flipping a bunch of Democratic seats in 2022. Now, 4 out of 5 of those have since flipped back to Democratic control, either through resignations like George Santos's and then special elections, or the results from last week. Mike Lawler, I think, is the only one left standing. But still, Zeldin endeared himself by being a staunch Trump defender, staunch defender of Israel, and also, just sort of building kind of a Republican Party apparatus around his gubernatorial campaign that seemed to help out the Republican Party.
For sure, yeah.
And he's going to be. Oh, wait, I guess we should say what he's been going to be nominated for.
Waiting on the setup.
Yeah, Environmental Protection Agency, which came as a surprise to most people who cover the Environmental Protection Agency and Lee Zeldin, because he had not really spent a ton of time talking about the environment or anything besides, like fracking is good or whatever. I don't know. Like it a little bit of a surprise. And I think that, it's been a few days since Zeldin was announced. And I think some people, I get the feeling that, some of the people we're going to talk about in a little bit may have overshadowed his nomination.
Just a little bit, yeah. One thing Lee Zeldin comes to mind is fighter. And I say that because I've heard Donald Trump at rallies and other things in New York describe the former congressman that way. He likes that he fought Hochul so hard. He likes that he fought so hard for the congressional candidates, as you alluded to. Trump just sees him as a fellow New Yorker and a fighter. He was going to find a place for him. And our colleagues who cover energy and environment every day were surprised by this. That's what they wrote. It's on rollcall.com. People can look that up. So what it tells me, short and sweet here, is he's not going to EPA to run it or make it great again. He's probably, as a fighter and someone, as former member of Congress, he knows how all this works. He's probably going to try to unravel it, or as much as they can get done in 2 to 4 years. So that's my read on it, is he's not going there to make it great again. He's going there to have less EPA in our lives, less EPA in businesses' lives, kind of that cutting red tape, cutting regulation type thing.
Gotcha. All right. Well, as I alluded to, many New Yorkers find themselves eventually in Florida. Let's head to Florida, where we'll talk first about the senior senator from Florida, Marco Rubio. This is he is in his 3rd term. He ran for president in 2016, where Trump gave him the moniker Little Marco, a reference to his diminutive stature compared to the president, the eventual president during the campaign. They have since kissed and made up. Again, like, it doesn't make any sense to call him a never Trumper, because he's a pretty staunch Trump defender. Right there up in the sort of Coliseum box in the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The Caesars, one of Caesar's people there. What about Rubio has been nominated to be Secretary of State? What'd you make of that? That seemed to me almost like a mainstream choice. He's
Yes. This is now the mainstream choice of what we've gotten. And remember, we've only gotten 4 cabinet level positions. It feels like 14. EPA is not a cabinet level, official cabinet level. Now, Trump can make it a cabinet level. He did that last time, probably will this time. Elevate things, move things down. Back to Rubio, mainstream pick. This one's going to get Democratic support. Mark Warner, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, has already basically endorsed the nomination, said it's a good pick. He's worked closely with Rubio, who's been the vice chair. The top Republican is called the vice chair. The top minority member is called the vice chair. They've worked on intelligence and foreign policy, national security issues the last number of years, almost 5 years, I think now.
Yeah.
So he'll get Democratic support. That one should sail through. There shouldn't be anything that, he's been vetted for a number of things. It tells me that everybody gets to win here. Rubio, where's he going to go in the Senate? I don't think he's ever ran for leadership. I don't think he's ever shown much interest in being majority leader down the road, for instance. He didn't run this time. So he gets to move out of the Senate, Secretary of State. It's an exhausting job. Trump's going to keep him busy. America first. There's 2 wars to wind down, to try to wind down. Let me put it that way. So Rubio is going to be a busy guy once he gets confirmed. And I think he'll get confirmed pretty quickly. So he gets to move out of the Senate, Secretary of State. You can kind of stay out of the limelight while being in the limelight. And he can be overseas while Trump is at home doing all sorts of chaos and kind of raise his profile. We think, and Republican strategists that I've talked to think that Rubio wants to run for president again. So he can raise his profile, do it for a year and a half, 2 years. Then I'm tired. I want to go home to my family and plan my presidential campaign. Trump gets to help his old buddy Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. They'll name someone, maybe not named Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis might not want to come to Washington with Donald Trump as president, but they'll get to fill that seat with a Republican, and everybody kind of gets to win here. And Trump's going to get to probably pick the MAGA heir apparent. And I was in Milwaukee. You were in Milwaukee at the RNC. Rubio comes up when you talk to delegates and Republican officials. He's on that list. So I think everybody wins here. I think this one actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, as you said, he gets to raise his profile as Secretary of State, do it for, who knows how long. Rubio also does not come from wealth. He is, very decidedly sort of a more middle class background. And so this, if you're going to run for president, if you're going to stay in politics, and take it to the next level, it helps to enhance your stature or enhance your portfolio. Your financial portfolio, and certainly Secretary of State gives him a bigger stature than he would just as simply a 3rd or 4th term senator.
Right.
So, my
exactly.
opinion.
Yep.
All right. Well, staying in Florida, Michael Waltz, who is the national security advisor. Now, this is not a cabinet level position. It's a senior staff position. Doesn't require Senate confirmation, so Waltz will be able to move over there. As soon as Trump is inaugurated, if not before. Waltz 3 terms, Green Beret, worked for Dick Cheney, although that apparently is not disqualifying in at least in this iteration of Trump world. We worked for Dick Cheney when Cheney was Secretary of Defense during the first George H.W. Bush administration. Again, 3 terms as a House member. Like this, I mean, again, he's very much a hawk, but he also seems kind of mainstream.
Interesting choice here. The first thing, you listed off Green Beret, House experience, worked in the Pentagon with Dick Cheney. He served in Afghanistan, served in the Middle East, served in Africa. He's also on foreign affairs and intelligence in addition to armed services. The first thought that came to mind, why isn't he the Secretary of Defense nominee? I understand that you want somebody like that in the White House, but you can find guys like that. I covered national security and defense for a long time. There are a lot of Mike Waltzes out there, a lot of smart, capable, experienced people that could be national security advisor. You read Waltz's bio, and it reads like a Secretary of Defense. So it could be some tension there between, as there often is, between the West Wing and the E-ring. See what I did there? And over at the Pentagon, only a defense reporter can do that. And there is a lot of tension. There usually is tension, but is Waltz, with his experience, going to want to dictate to a gentleman who we'll get to in a second, the Secretary of Defense nominee, who's not as experienced as Waltz, at least not at running military things and overseeing it, doing oversight, that type of thing. So could Waltz kind of be a shadow defense secretary from right down the hall from the Oval Office? I can tell you from experience, having covered all of that, that never goes well.
No, just ask the W people.
Oh, yeah.
The epic conflicts among Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, and Secretary of Defense. The power struggles are real in these. I mean, you don't get into these positions typically without a huge ego, and when you have a portfolio that includes, lots of guns,
Right.
you feel like you can assert yourself. So
Ask Chuck Hagel what it's like to have the West Wing trying to run your Defense Department.
All right, staying in Florida, Matt Gaetz,
Here we go.
Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General. He is in his fourth term in the House until last night when he resigned. He resigned, according to reporting, in a manner that surprised the Speaker of the House. At least that's what Mike Johnson said. It also conveniently removes him from the jurisdiction of the House Ethics Committee, which was compiling a report investigating allegations of sexual misconduct, drug use, use for campaign funds for personal use, things like that. He was investigated by the Justice Department itself, and they did not follow up with criminal charges on those same charges. But Gaetz, big critic of the Justice Department, big supporter of Donald Trump, and has been. And this took some people by surprise, even in a town accustomed to trying not to be taken by surprise by Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think we should stop trying to not be taken by surprise. We shouldn't be. I used to say by the end of his first term, we can be surprised, but we shouldn't be so shocked all the time. I think we need to get back into that mindset. The text message I got yesterday, because I was moving in between things. I was on Capitol Hill yesterday and was transitioning, and the text message I got was in all capital letters, and it just said Matt Gaetz! ! So, and that pretty much sums it up, right? And it went on into the evening. Former Congressman Gaetz also stepped down from his House seat. You mentioned the House ethics investigation. Now that he's a former member of Congress, what happens with that? You had the Speaker last night, Speaker Mike Johnson, telling reporters, Matt's done us a favor because we can fill the seat maybe by the time the new Congress is sworn in. That probably won't happen. Reading some stuff this morning, the timeline seems like it'll be a little longer, but looks like they'll have that seat filled sometime in February, March at the latest. They probably won't be affected because any reconciliation bill, a fast-track budget measure, you can do all sorts of things. It'll take them into March to get that written, and they'll argue about it because they're House Republicans. It's what they do. So Gaetz has done everyone a favor, according to the Speaker. So I don't think anybody's going to leak the ethics investigation. As far as the nomination goes,
well, we'll see. We'll see. Matt Gaetz has a way of eliciting strong reactions from people.
He has a lot of enemies. I mean, I remember covering some of these budget fights where Gaetz and a few others were holding everything up. And some of the things people were saying, you're right. So if somebody can get on the Z drive and download the ethics report, maybe we'll see it one day. As far as the nomination goes, the ethics report, if it does leak, could sink this nomination fairly quickly. There's an uphill battle already. I was reading some reporting this morning. They don't have the votes. Let's put it that way. They have to convince Republican senators. The Democrats are not going to vote for Matt Gaetz. So they've lost 47, around 47 Democratic seats. I'm thinking Collins, Murkowski, that crowd, especially the female, the women Republican senators, because of some of the allegations against former Congressman Gaetz. And he's going to go meet with them. Boy, to be a fly on those walls, right? So they've got a hard amount of work ahead. It'll be interesting. They call it a shepherd. That's who leads some of the nominees around. The Sherpa. It'll be interesting to see who his Sherpa is. They've used Kelly Ayotte in the past, but she's
now the governor of New Hampshire.
Yeah, so she's a little busy getting ready to run New Hampshire.
I can imagine some of the other folks, like John Kyle in Arizona, former senator, saying like, I've got to wash my hair.
I've got a doctor's appointment
Right.
that week.
I need to take the car in to get the oil changed.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's something to keep
for
an
the
eye
next
on.
4 months.
Right, right. An oil change for the next 4 months. Exactly. I have to vacuum that
Right.
month. Yeah. So look for the ethics the House ethics report from the investigation, and who is the Sherpa. Those are, I think, the big things to watch. And
Yeah.
what Republican senators say about it. They were so caught off guard, as our colleagues were asking. I think they wanted to go home and maybe pour a beverage and think about it before they commented.
Yeah, and again, even if the ethics committee report, on Gaetz doesn't leak, doesn't become public, which is hard. It's hard to imagine that somebody wouldn't, find a way to get this into the ether.
Right.
This Senate Judiciary Committee is perfectly capable of investigating him themselves as part of their due diligence in the confirmation process. I mean, there are still people who investigate these kind of things and take these jobs for vetting kind of seriously, even if other people don't. And also, I feel like we're remiss if we don't also just note that Matt Gaetz is potentially most famous for being among the people leading the charge to depose Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. We saw a pretty tense series of exchanges between Kevin McCarthy and Matt Gaetz at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, and it will be quite interesting. One of the quotes that I saw last night, I think this is in the New York Times, Max Miller, who's a Republican from Ohio, again, not some sort of squishy, moderate, liberal Republican. This guy's a pretty conservative guy. He said, "I don't know why Matt would do this to himself, but I'm certainly going to get some popcorn so I can watch the spectacle of it."
Yeah, it doesn't really add up, and because he has so many enemies, including they're kind of colloquial on the Hill called Friends of Kevin, the McCarthy allies. Most of them are still there. Yeah. And again, if you can get on I'm being facetious, but maybe not. If you can get on the Z drive, I don't know why a friend of Kevin wouldn't go for a little payback here.
Yeah, there's a few people that I think would love to inflict a little discomfort there, considering how much they had tied their fates to Kevin McCarthy, and this is going to be an interesting one. And also, I was thinking about this, even if the nomination gets sunk, this is good politics for Trump, right? Because he's like, Matt's my guy. He's loyal. He's a critic of the Justice Department, and I nominated who I thought was the best guy for the job, and the swamp and deep state sunk him. And so he gets another enemy because, let's face it, the Democrats are kind of powerless, in a lot of circumstances here. So he can't blame, he has fewer and fewer enemies, and he always does well when he's got very well-defined enemies or very vague ones, like such as the deep state. And so, if Gaetz doesn't make it, and there's always at least one cabinet nominee who doesn't get, across the finish line in every administration or every incoming administration. He can say, like, I had this great guy, and it gives him an excuse to find primary opponents for senators who vote against him, or just sort of go on sort of a tear about like how life is unfair to poor Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, he can say that Gaetz was a victim of the same weaponization of government by the Biden administration, even though I believe all this dates back to who was president? Oh, yeah, Donald Trump.
John Trump. Okay. Couple more folks here. We're not going to get to every single one of the cabinet secretaries. You did mention Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth, but we won't have a lot of time to get to him. But we can save that for another time, because right now, I mean, I think the rest of America want to talk about John Ratcliffe.
Oh,
nominee for CIA director.
Just clamoring. Can't wait.
So John Ratcliffe served a little under 3 terms in the House. He left the House in 2020 to become Donald Trump's Director of National Intelligence at the end of Trump 1. And I think, again, even back then, I was like, I'm going to have to look up the member profile here at CQ and other just to see who this guy is. I mean, again, he's kind of he's very much a Trump loyalist. He's pretty conservative, but he's also comes from a fairly traditional kind of political background. He was a U.S. attorney, he was in the House. He's a Republican from Texas. He's a white guy. It's not that he's mainstream compared to, say, I don't know, Leon Panetta or whatever, but like, it seems like, again, kind of in the Waltz, Rubio Stefanik mode, where this guy's he's qualified. I mean, he had access to the intelligence agencies and services as DNI. This is technically a step down from DNI, which is interesting. We'll get to the DNI designee in a second, because the CIA director, CIA is under the aegis of the Directorate of National Intelligence. Right. But to be honest, I don't really remember that much about Ratcliffe. But you were covering the White House at the time, so you go. I'm going to put it all on your shoulders.
Yeah, this was a curious pick back then. He had some trouble getting confirmed, but eventually did. And I think that will help because he's been Senate confirmed once. Remember, Trump calls these guys all the time. And if I remember, Ratcliffe was one of the guys on the phone with Trump sometimes. So they did have a relationship that way. And, it is a step down technically for Ratcliffe to go from DNI to Director of Central Intelligence. But, and I was talking to some other reporters at the White House about these jobs the other day, and I reminded them CIA is the fun one because that's the actual spy stuff. Right. DNI was formed, and it's a clerical job, and it was intended that way. It's supposed to bring all, how many? There are 18 intelligence, 11 plus the DIA over at the the Navy has an intelligence, so it's to bring everything together and then put those products together for the White House, for the president.
It's like being an editor-in-chief,
right? Like you were the DNI, right? You're the DNI, and I'm the CIA. So you're actually dealing with the spy stuff where you're getting reports from a guy who sat at a bar in Istanbul, and then your analyst is taking that, putting it in a bigger picture, and you get to read that and make decisions and talk to the president and others about that all day and go to the Hill and brief them. So I think that's in a way that's a more attractive job. And as CIA director, you get to stay out of all of it. So when Trump is doing all of his chaos thing, and chaos is part of the plan, it keeps us back on our heels, and then you do more chaos, and your enemies and the media never really get to regroup. But if you're Ratcliffe, you get to go out to Langley and just do all the fun spy stuff.
Yeah. No, the name a movie where about the American intelligence apparatus where the CIA director, it's usually the CIA director has some kind of like role, right? James Gandolfini, played right. Leon Panetta in Zero Dark 30, and actually has one of my favorite lines of all time from all spy and Washington-based movies, which is when he gets into the elevator with one of his deputies, and they're talking about Jessica Chastain's character, which the fictional name is escaping me, and says, "Well, so what do you think?" And the deputy says, "Well, she's really smart," and Gandolfini / Panetta turns to him and says, "We're all smart."
Exactly. I'll admit my bias.
DNIs don't get to deliver those roles, those lines.
No, they don't. If I admit a bias here as a member of the media, if I could pick one job in Washington to do for 6 months or 6 weeks or 6 hours, it would definitely be CIA director.
Yeah, so cool. Get to see the toys. All right. Congrats to John Ratcliffe. Gets after doing the clerical coordination job management, he gets to do the fun one, which takes us to the person who is DNI designee, and that is former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. Served in four-term Congresswoman, Democrat from Hawaii. Military veteran, ran for president, did not make it far in 2020 in the 2020 campaign cycle. Did a hard right turn into the loving embrace of MAGA world and Donald Trump, where she has been one of his biggest defenders on the campaign trail, and now she has been selected by the president-elect to be Director of National Intelligence, the role that John Negroponte defined. Bet you didn't see that name coming.
Oh, look at that's
the first DNI.
That's a great pull. Well done. Well done. Yeah, this one proves that flattery and loyalty will get you far. She, as you said, she turned hard right MAGA. This is after defending the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad, defending Vladimir Putin, of course, president of Russia. Went right into MAGA world, and she has not looked back. She campaigned with Donald Trump. One of these very friendly town hall events, town hall, I'm using quote fingers. I don't believe they took a single question from the audience, but she moderated a town hall with Donald Trump. It went on for, I believe, over an hour. She was campaigning with him, introducing him at rallies. She was a big part of the campaign down the stretch, and he has rewarded her. And it is a clerical job, as I said, but it's not to say it's a bad job or a boring job. It's a very important job. And I think that's what the Senate Intelligence Committee is going to have some concerns, as they say, about some of these dealings she's had with Assad and others. They're going to tell her that she has some splaining to do during her confirmation hearing. And those classified settings, because they'll have a public hearing and then usually in the afternoon into the evening sometimes, and sometimes a second day, they'll have a classified version of the confirmation hearing. That's where the good stuff happens. We don't get to see that, right? So I think they're going to have some concerns. They have a big uphill battle with Gaetz. It might be insurmountable. I think they've got an uphill battle here with Gabbard, but Trump's a big loyalty guy, meaning loyalty to him. And she does have the military experience. She did sit on some of the right committees when she was in the House, but she does have some explaining to do for some of these foreign dealings that she's had.
All right. Last but certainly not least, at least at 11:38 a.m. Eastern on Thursday, November 14th. We know that there will be more, but who knows? But we're cutting it off on this with Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. She's a four-term congresswoman and now two-term governor, and shot her dog.
It's very succinct, and all of that is accurate. Jason is not embellishing the last part. She is a farm person and had a dog that was not very trainable for what they needed the dog to do. So instead of doing what Jason, I know you or I would do, and probably all of our viewers and listeners, which would be ask at church, ask your neighbors, ask at the local market, ask at the local pub, the restaurant, take it to the shelter, find it another home. It's not a farm dog, right? Well, it can be a nice pet for somebody. It can chase the kids around the backyard, tire him out, Instead, she chose to put the dog down herself, according to her book.
Yeah, this wasn't just anecdotal. She wrote about it in her memoir.
She wrote it down and then went on a book tour about the book that has this anecdote. So I'm sure that will come up. I'm sure the Democrats on the committee will dig into that book, and the staffers will have dog-eared and Post-it note versions of that book. They probably already are.
See what you did there with dog-eared.
I didn't even mean to do that. So yeah, we're going to hear a lot more about this poor pooch, R.I.P. And not sure. I was talking to some folks about this, and we all kind of assumed that she was a better fit for the Interior Department. Don't really see this one as clearly. DHS, of course, includes the Secret Service. It includes the Border Patrol. It includes Customs. It includes ICE, Customs and Immigration Services. Last I checked, her state was not a border state, and Donald Trump ran on basically illegal immigration from the southern border. That's a long way. There are a lot of states in between.
What about those Canadians, though? That's just across North Dakota. If you think of like North and South Dakota as, I'm not
We
going to say that
always
there
have
once
to watch.
stayed. Yeah,
We always
but
South Park taught us we always have to watch our backs.
right,
to the
exactly. I mean, and more even than South Park and their sort of delineation of the dangers that Canada poses to us. But the John Candy movie, Canadian Bacon, classic, I think, of the genre about the supposed perils of the Canadian menace. Sort of like maple syrup dripping on a map.
Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, did not get along. So we joke today about the Canadian menace, but Trump will turn them into the Canadian menace again. Think about lumber, think about dairy products, think about
Comedians.
automobiles. Yeah, steel. So this is going to come up again, and just go ahead and write the executive order, get the tariffs going. Let's not waste any time. Let's find out if these things work or not. That's my take. That's my take.
No, that's a good one. I mean, also like we'll see what happens. I mean, there are professional sports, in Canada. The president-elect has a fondness for professional sports. More. I mean, he sort of famously tried to buy an NFL franchise, didn't work out, so he went with the USFL, where he developed his longtime friendship with Herschel Walker as part of the New Jersey / New York Generals. You didn't see a USFL reference coming in here, did you either?
I did not. Well done. That's very well done.
Time for everybody to watch.
Donald Trump helped kill the USFL.
It's time for everybody to watch Small Potatoes, the 30 for 30 ESPN documentary.
Yes. It's really great.
Yes, about
really
the USFL and specifically about Donald Trump and his role in it. I mean, Noem was, all kidding aside, Noem was considered a potential vice presidential pick for him before, the shooting the dog stuff came up. Mm-hmm. Although I was surprised that would have taken her out of the running because, Donald Trump famously doesn't like dogs. So right. It didn't seem to be a knock on it, but maybe they knew that with J.D. Vance, the eventual vice presidential nominee, like he hates cats. Or cat ladies at least. Maybe they just figured there's just too much animal stuff going on.
Maybe. Well, I'm glad that we kept this going. One thing that I never really got to report from Milwaukee at the RNC was when Kristi Noem addressed the arena, how flat the crowd was. And you compare that to even Eric Trump, who started out with a pretty flat audience, he had them going at the end. He got them back and got them out of their seats. Noem didn't really do that. Vivek Ramaswamy, I mean, I thought the Bucks had just won the NBA title as he was wrapping up his speech. And she just didn't really resonate. I wrote a story about who's the future of MAGA, and no one I talked to brought her up. I was surprised by that.
Well, give her time. There's more, she's relatively young and there's a lot more dogs out there to shoot. So, maybe she can,
let's hope for the dog's sake that maybe she becomes a better trainer.
I mean, I would guess that there are quite a few service dogs in TSA and Border Patrol and so forth. So
you would think that she could have hired a trainer. Okay, it's not working out for me. Let me bring in a trainer and or I don't know, find a new home for the dog.
Well, John, thank you for talking about the members and former members of Congress, always so dear to our heart here at Political Theater and CQ and Roll Call. We could have gone on. Eventually, we will go on about other members of the cabinet, but we'll keep it to just currents and formers, members of Congress. And now I think I need to edit your story.
Oh, right. I filed.
You did. I'll turn my attention to that. But in the meantime, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you later.